Welcome to a conversation about mental health. Brought to you by RED. Rescue, empower, deploy.
Welcome back, everyone. Hands up if you're enjoying the session so far. I hope that you are, and as I said before, people learn best when they're having fun. I mean, how boring would it be if I just simply stood behind the podium here and said, in 1983, a study was conducted by Mills and Wilner, and they found that there's, I would be asleep if we were doing that, but hopefully you'll stay awake because the best is yet to come. I was on a flight not so long ago from Amsterdam to Zurich, and I read a book called The One Thing. It wasn't a very thick book, so thin enough to read in one single flight. And truth be told, I only got one thing from the book. And it wasn't even by the author. The author was just quoting somebody else who said, look, high-performance leaders are often juggling many balls. And so they have to acknowledge that not all balls are made from the same stuff. You know, we might be juggling the ball called, work, or we might be juggling the ball called health or relationships or family, or there's so many different balls that we are juggling at the same time. But some of the balls are made from rubber, such that if you drop them, they bounce right back. Whereas other balls might be made from glass. I've got an egg in my hand. This is symbolic of something that's a little bit more fragile. And so you want to prioritize those things that are fragile in your life. Look, if you're juggling the ball called work and it's made from rubber, it wasn't supposed to crack. I'm sorry for the person who's going to have to clean that up afterwards. But there's this idea that it's made from rubber. It should have bounced back. It obviously didn't because it was an egg. And so there'll be more work tomorrow. But if I was juggling the ball called health and I dropped that, well, that's not so easy to get back. Or if I'm juggling the ball called marriage and I drop that, well, that's not so easy to come back from either. There have to be some certain things that we prioritize in our lives. And once again, I do apologize. That wasn't really meant to happen like that. But the interesting thing about eggs is that when every now and again, I'll invite what looks to be like a strong person to the stage. We don't have time for it today, but and I'll ask them if they could crush the egg. So the instructions are you have to place it in the middle of your palm and you have to wrap your fingers evenly around the egg, and now with all of your might, give it your best shot. And it's obviously a little bit embarrassing for the person who came up and like, yeah, no worries, and then they're like, it's an amazing experiment to do for yourselves. No doubt some of you will go home and in your kitchen later on this afternoon, you're like, I'm going to give that a go, like no egg can beat me. But when the pressure is evenly dispersed, the egg becomes almost impenetrable. It's a funny observation to make, and it's a great analogy for mental health and emotional well-being, because sometimes we feel fragile like an egg and we know how easy it is to break or fall apart. All we need is one accident, one incidental experience, and when we're on the ground and we're in pieces. And how do you put that back together again? Well, so much better is to understand from an early intervention and prevention perspective, well, how do I not get broken in the first place? And the principle is disperse the pressure. In fact, there was this, since we're in like a church, right, there was this verse that I read that I thought might be timely to share with you. It's found in 2 Corinthians 4, verse 8. It says, we are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. And I thought, oh, this fits perfectly. Perplexed, but not in despair. Because when I hard press it on either side, and it's not crushed, it's quite perplexing. Like, why isn't I should be stronger than an egg? We're not abandoned, struck down, we're not destroyed. When the pressure is dispersed, you are able to withstand the pressure. Because truth be told, if we don't disperse the pressure, if there's just one single point of pressure, well then maybe the equation would be different. So sometimes you and I, we can be wrestling with one particular thing that's happening. And so at night, usually is the time where we nurse, curse, and rehearse all of the good things, not so much in our lives. And so I'm like a mouse on a treadmill going around and around and around and around, and then I eventually fall asleep and I dream about it all night long, and then I wake up and sure enough, first thing in the morning, slap to the, oh, I better be careful, could have egg on my face, slap to the forefront of my mind is the same thing. We call this a sticky thought. I just can't seem to shake it from my mind. And it's interesting, even though we could disperse the pressure and the egg becomes impenetrable, with one single point of pressure, we are easily, okay, send the invoice to Jonathan Fontana Rosa at Edge Church. The point is simply this. We need to learn how to effectively disperse the pressure, because one single point of pressure is enough to break us. And so that's what I want to talk about in this final session together. What are the ways in which we can successfully set up action points in our lives? What are the principles that we could adopt so that we could truly become impenetrable? And even if we have experienced great tragedy or even travesty in our lives, what are the principles that we could adopt or employ that will help fast track change? And when I say change, once again, I'm not just talking about recovery when we've been set back. I'm talking about going beyond zero into plus, ending up better off in the end than when before the tragedy took place. It's like that age-old Nietzsche quote, that which doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. Except sometimes it's a bit hard to believe, because that thing that happened, like, it almost killed me. And for some of us, we might make a recovery, but for others, we walk around with a limp for the rest of our lives. But there is a small select group of people that discover the secrets, if you will. Sounds like a sales pitch, or sounds like some kind of new agey thing. It's like, the secrets, just buy my book and I will unlock your, no, whatever. The idea is that there are principles that we can apply in our lives that can help us not just recover, but go from strength to strength. As we said before, ending up better off in the end than what we were before the tragedy took place. I was giving a seminar not so long ago for a group of financial leaders. And I asked them almost like a pop question. Just be careful whenever a psychologist asks you a question. Chances are it may be a trick question. But I said, I want to take 5 different pots, as in pot plant pots. And these different pots are 5 different colors, and these colors represent different things. For example, the yellow color of the pot might be symbolic of the sun, or a green pot might be symbolic of vegetation, and the brown pot might be symbolic of the dirt in which we plant seeds. And so the question is, if I was to put some fertile soil in each of these pots, and plant a seed into each of these 5 pots, and water each of these 5 pots, and put all 5 in the sun, question, which one will grow? And one gentleman put his hand up, and no exaggeration, he said, it's the brown one. And I said, wow, you're not supposed to say that, because remember, this is a trick question. And he actually answered it correct. So if, in case you're wondering which one of these pots, it's the brown one. But I'm like, how did you know? Like, you stole my thunder. Like, what? And he said, because I determined it to be so. I'm like, oh, okay. So like some kind of law of attraction, like if you just will it into being, it will. But you know, we've got names for such things. You can stand in front of your mirror and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest? Yeah. Delusions of grandeur is a phenomena that we would... So he's like, I determined it to be so, and so you just willed it into being. I'm like, okay, but I got a question for you. Like, why not the green one? Or the yellow one? Or the pink one? Because as I'm sure all of you know, it doesn't matter what color the pot is. What matters is, are the conditions and the variables right for growth? Yeah. The point is, if you put a seed in fertile soil and water it and put it into the sun, growth is not optional, it's inevitable. Yeah, that's right. Yes. And that's why, when it comes to the topic of mental health, we would do well to shift our mindsets. that, well, there are just some things you just have to put up, you just cope with it, that's just the way they are, and they're just, they're just a narcissist. Narcissists don't typically tend to change, and that might be the popular rhetoric of the day, but if change is not possible, then what on earth am I doing in this profession? And what are you doing in your profession? Or for the non-professionals, you people in church, what are you doing in church? If Jesus can't transform lives, why gather on a Sunday? What are you, pretending? We either believe it or we don't. And I, for one, I believe passionately because I have seen lives transform the world over in the terms of hundreds of thousands. And so I want to bring a good news message to a hurt and a broken world. I want to ask the question, what is it about individuals that are not only able to make a recovery, but go from strength to strength? There was another professor who was asking the similar question, and his name is Professor Martin Seligman. They made some observations that people who go through deep, dark tragedies in their lives, some actually end up better off. It's almost like they got springboarded out of their crisis into their calling. But they went one step further and actually started asking the academic question, what is it? What qualities or characteristics do these people possess that allow them to grow through their tragedy? Well, it's an interesting philosophy or interesting point of nature, and that is that plants grow better from the rain of a thunderstorm than they do from a normal rain shower or a sprinkler system. Did you know that? Isn't it amazing? Because sometimes when we go through storms of life, we're like, no, I hate the storms. But in actual fact, if you look back in your life and you look at some of the areas where you have grown the most, I guarantee there'll be storms that preceded it. And the reason why is because when the lightning strikes, it separates the nitrons in the air and they fall together with the raindrops to the ground. And when it hits the ground and becomes infused with the dirt, the nitrons turn into nitrate, which is fertilizer, helping plants to grow. In other words, whatever you go through, you can grow through. And Professor Martin Seligman was asking the question, what is it? What do these people possess? What characteristics? And they found that they possess 5 unique core character strengths, principles that they live by that almost inoculates them, helps them to become emotionally resilient. But not just resilient in terms of a bounce back, but a bounce forward, catapulting them into their future. So they're falling forward, if you will, into a great tomorrow. Does anyone want to know what these 5 characteristics or points are? Well, the good news is that's what we're going to talk about right now. And characteristic number 1 is called hope. Hope. Now, hope, sometimes we will encounter individuals, or maybe even you yourself, find yourself at a place where you go, no, I've got no hope. But if ever anybody was to say that, or if you're saying that to yourself at the moment, follow it up with the second question, what does that mean? And more often than not, people will say, well, I just kind of feel hopeless. But can I just point out that feeling hopeless is not the same as having no hope? Because for you to have no hope means you're dead. So long as you have breath in your lungs, there is always hope. And if hopeless is a principle of just having less of it, well, then get some more. It's a little bit like that age-old adage, we've all got a measure of faith. Well, the same is true with hope. We've all got a measure of hope, and hope can be cultivated. The best definition of hope is making a decision or a choice to believe that my tomorrow is going to be better than my today or my yesterday. It's just a decision that I'm making in my mind. I'm just going to choose to believe that there's good stuff still in front of me. Even though it might be difficult to see, I'm going to hold on to hope. But I think in our modern day and age, we kind of confuse what hope means. For somebody who is unemployed, they might be like, if I could just get that university degree, and then I can, I could get that job, and then once you get the job, if I could just get that promotion, then I'd be happy, because then I'd have more money, and it always seems to be just out of reach. If I could just get that, or just get that, and then when does it end? Or maybe for you it's not money, maybe for you it's romance. Maybe you thought to yourself, if I could just get that girl to go out with me, like if I could ask her out on a date and she said yes, that would be amazing. And so you say, hey, will you go out with me? And she says, yes. And now you've got a little bit of hope. And then you think to yourself, okay, the date went well. Like if I could ask her to go out with me and like keep on going out with me, that would be good. Because then I'd be really happy. But then if she would be my girlfriend, like if she would say yes and we would be an item, then I would be really happy. And then if I could get down on bended knee and if she was to say yes to the marriage proposal, whoa, I'd be like the happiest man in the world. And then if she could just rock up on the wedding day. But once you're married, it's like that age-old philosophy. Love is blind. Then you get married and now you can see. And all it takes is for just one argument for your balloon to be passed over the flame of life, and it's amazing. In that moment, your hopes are dashed, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't hope in the first place. Maybe it was just wishful thinking. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. We've got these, a variety of different sayings, but I love that there is a hope that does not disappoint. This hope is found in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. It says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen." So faith, it's not wishful thinking. It's not just blind faith. It's like, well, no, I'm going to base my faith on the substance of things hoped for. So I've got a question. What if instead of hot air, what if we were to fill our balloon of hope with substance? So let's together do a little scientific experiment. Now that my balloon of hope is filled with the substance of things hoped for, and as I'm doing this experiment, I'm realizing that my iPad is vicariously close to the flame, and if this bursts, this is going to be a catastrophe. The bill is just getting bigger, isn't it, Pastor Jonathan? But hang on, what's going on here? Because it's not that the temperature of the flame has changed, and it's not that the quality of the rubber has changed. Nope, still made in China. But rather, it seems as though what the balloon is filled with makes a difference. And can I just point out, it's never pleasant to pass over the flame of life, but though we may get burned, we will not break when we are filled with the substance of things hoped for. I'm going to need to hand this off to somebody. Thank you. I would have tied a knot in it and handed it out to you, but so what is this substance of hope? Well, core characteristic identified by Professor Martin Seligman and his colleagues in the United States is this phenomena called faith. It's characteristic number 2. And in the literature, it's not just any old faith. It's not kind of faith for a future. It's actually religious faith. In fact, they call it religiousness, but I don't like the term because it's a little misleading. Research shows that it doesn't matter if you belong to a religion or you participate in religious activities. It doesn't matter how many hours a day or how many times a day you might pray or how many hours you might read a Bible, how many services you might come. Religious activity also doesn't seem to make a difference. In fact, and this might be sacrilegious to say in a church, but according to empirical studies, even believing in God doesn't seem to make any difference when it comes to mental health and emotional well-being. I'm sorry, Pastor. I would love to say something else, but I'm just a scientist first and foremost, and I read the data, and the data speaks for itself. Believing in God doesn't do you any good when it comes to mental health and emotional well-being. And there's silence on both sides. It's like the religious people are like, and the irreligious people are like, well, let's just stop and think about it for a second. We're just having a conversation, right? It's okay to ask questions. Why would that be the case? And when you stop to think about it, you go, you know what? Even the devil believes in God, and it doesn't seem to do him much good. According to empirical studies, it's not whether or not you believe in God or go to church or practice in religious faith. It's the core differentiating factor between people who grow through their difficulties and those who don't is that people believe in a God who actually cares cares about them, and the care factor makes all the difference. You know, people don't care about how much you know. People care about how much you care. Whether you're in church, serving the community, or you're an allied health professional, serving your clients, people care if you actually care. It's not that you've got the title and you've got the doctorate and you've got the... No. Do you actually care? And that is the same when it comes to faith in a deity that's outside of us. Now, it's a difficult thing to talk about, especially as a mental health professional, and we work in troubled hotspots around the world in trauma. And so I was giving a training for medical staff at a hospital in Iraq not so long ago. And as I was describing this to them, you could see there was a bit of an awkward shift in the seats, and people are like, and who are you exactly? And where do you come from? And which philosophy are you? And so I said, look, I'm not here to tell you what you should believe. I'm just here to tell you what the data, what the research shows. And so I tried to unpack it in a real simple analogy. I said, look, there was this lady one day, and she was pregnant with triplets. And it was her third trimester. And she came from a long line of carpenters. Her auntie was a carpenter, her dad was a carpenter, her granddad was a carpenter. And so there's all these carpenters in the family, and she was pretty nifty with her own hands. And so she decided in the last trimester of pregnancy that she was going to build her own baby's furniture. And so she went off to the lumber yard and with her own coin bought some timber, carried it back to her home. She put the timber down, she started sawing, she started hammering, and the three babies in utero started up a conversation with one another. And the first baby said to the other two, like, what on earth is going on? All of this noise and this vibration and this pressure, like, what's happening? And baby number two said, oh, you know, I think all of this noise, vibration, and pressure is a sign that something really good is about to happen. Whereas baby number three said, oh, no, this sign, this noise, this vibration, this pressure, it's a looming, imminent sign that something bad is about to happen. Baby number one said to the other two, do you really think that something good or bad could really happen? And baby number two said, yes, because you see, I believe in this thing called life after birth. And not only that, but I believe in this creature called mother. And I believe that she has our best interests in her heart. In fact, I think that she's preparing a place for us. Baby number three said, in the words of Danny Guglielmucci, how stupid can you be and still breathe, even though you're not breathing yet? Give me the cord here. There is no such thing as life after birth, and even if there was, I don't want to ever experience it because that sounds terribly scary out there. And look, there is no such thing as mother, and even if there was, I don't want to ever meet her because what kind of woman? And now, entrance stage left is the question that people who, when have experienced trauma, irrespective of whether or not they believe in God, find themselves talking to Him. Yeah. And the most common question is, why? Yeah. Why would you let this happen to me? Or maybe what? What kind of God? If God exists, like, why would He let this stuff happen? And it's a common question that is asked among both religious and irreligious people. It's a question common to humanity. But if you're going to ask God a question, at least give Him the chance to answer. Who am I? Well, there may be three different interpretations of what's going on. So I said to the guys in Iraq, I said, look, I'm not here to tell you what you should believe, but I am here to tell you what the data says. Only one of these three babies is enabled to go on and develop what's called post-traumatic growth. You've all heard of post-traumatic stress, but there's a new phenomena in clinical psychology called post-traumatic growth, where you get springboarded out of your crisis, as we said before, into your calling, that you can actually go from strength to strength. And a characteristic number two, the substance of things hoped for, is a belief in a deity that actually cares about you. And if that's true, I'm not saying it is, you believe, you make your own decision, but if that's true, well then you can tap into core character strength number three, which is called gratitude. Right. I love the verse that says, be thankful in most things. Oh, sorry. Be thankful, that one must have been the Victorian Bible. Be thankful in all things. things, in all situations and circumstances. Why? Because this is God's will for us. But hang on, really? Like, what about when I've experienced great tragedy? What about when things are going bad? Like, surely not then. But my observation is that grateful people, they actually attract more good things into their lives to be more grateful for. It's kind of like this flow-on effect or a domino effect, that it doesn't matter what is going on. In fact, gratitude is the strategy or the action point that you can take. It's like our devices. They just play up. They're frozen. They're not working. And so we tend to just press the on-off button for 5 seconds and the whole thing reboots. That's what gratitude does. It reboots your system, it hijacks your brain and takes back control such that you can be feeling in the darkest of spots in your life. You don't know how to go on, and yet you go, I'm gonna have the discipline just to find 5 things I'm thankful for. And when you start counting your blessings one by one, it's all of a sudden like, wow, this is like, it's weird because I don't feel like that anymore. Now, these have to be specific things. Research has shown there's a couple of different styles of gratitude. Christopher, University of Michigan, I know his name's Christopher something, no, can't find it. Peterson, sorry. Christopher Peterson, he's done a couple of research studies where he's encouraged people to find somebody who's done something really nice for them and write them a letter or a card or call them up and express your gratitude to them. And so what they observed is that when people do this activity, it's like emotional fireworks go off in their lives. They feel really good, but at the same time, they made the observation that it's not long lasting. So if you're depressed on Friday, you do this fantastic gratitude exercise on Saturday, come Monday, you're depressed again. But then they took another group of people and they said, we don't want you to find someone to thank. We'd like you to thank the source. In fact, we'd like you to keep a gratitude journal every night before going to bed and just find 5 things that you're grateful for. But they have to be, as I said before, specific. So not just happy to be alive, happy to be married, I think. No, what transpired today that you can be thankful for? I went to a seminar. Yeah, the speaker was all right, but in the break, man, I went out and they had all this food, and I met up with somebody. We talked, we chatted, and actually I remember we had somebody who we knew in common, and it was so nice to be able to chat. I felt like I really, like the people just wrapped their arms. I am grateful that I came to the event. Okay, what's 2? And then what's 3? Most people can get to 3 and then get stuck. And now you have to actually really search, and you have to sit down. Just like you sat down when you were looking for the keys, and you go, and what else was there? Yeah. And as you search the deepest, darkest annexes of your mind, it could be just a small nuance. Yeah, you know what? I got a car park just as I arrived. One was just leaving. And it might be a small thing, but I just felt like favor was on me. Or somebody actually guided me in the car park, and it seems as though all the car parks weren't too far from the entrance. And that was a real blessing too. Like just counting your blessings one by one. Research shows that when people do this, no emotional fireworks go off in their life. There's no, yes, I feel fantastic. In fact, it takes a much longer time for the emotional well-being to rise. But after you've been doing it for a number of weeks, something shifts in your emotional well-being, and now that emotional well-being is sustainable for the long term. Because it's not just an activity, no, it's become a part of who you are. When you are grateful, you're being generous. You're not just focusing on yourself, you're pointing out. You're not just grateful to the out there. No, there's a source of gratitude, and you're being grateful to the source of that which has bestowed goodness in your life. Whenever I think about this topic, I think of Winston Churchill. I'm not sure if you're a fan or if you don't like Winston Churchill. I personally love Winston Churchill. And one of the reasons why I love him so much is because whenever he was to give a speech, it kind of sounded like he was drunk. So purely for entertainment value, this guy is awesome. And on October 29th, 1941, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Winston, he visited Harrow School to give a speech to the students as he had done the year prior. But before speaking, the students sang the school song. But they changed one of the lines in the song so as to honour the Prime Minister. They did it the year before and they repeated it again. But this time when he got up to speak, he addressed the particular verse in the song. The song says, "Not lest we praise in darker days. The leader of our nation in Churchill's name shall win acclaim for each new generation. For you have power in danger's hour, our freedom to defend, sir. Though long the fight, we know that right will triumph in the end, sir." It's the song, "Not less we praise in darker days." So Winston Churchill gets up and he addresses the people. You sang that verse of the school song, you sang the extra verse written in my honour, which is greatly complimented by. But there's one word in it that I wanted to alter. I wanted to do so last year, but I ventured not to do. It's the line, "Not less we praise in darker days." I have obtained the headmaster's permission to alter darker to sterner, "not lest we praise in sterner days." Do not let us speak of darker days. Let us speak rather of sterner days. These are not dark days. These are great days. The greatest days our country has ever lived. And we must all thank God that we have been allowed, each of us, according to our stations, to play our part in making these days memorable in the history of our race. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And that is it. Isn't it funny that Winston Churchill, he's like, no, let's not give up being grateful. Even in what you would classify as dark days, there's still things that we can be grateful. We actually get to play our part in making history. So let's not call them darker, let's call them sterner. Let's have a resolve. If you've been knocked down, dust yourself off, pick yourself up and just take one more step. Just one step today. Come on, together, let's go. It's interesting, if you have hope based on the substance of a God who actually cares about you, well, that's something to be grateful for. And if you are grateful, if you have the discipline to count your blessings one by one, you get to tap into core character strength number 4, which is called kindness. Which is where we get to take the spotlight off of ourselves, our hurt, our pain, our bitterness, our resentment, all of the junk, all the baggage that we're carrying around. And I ask the question, okay, so what gifts, skills, talents, opportunities do I have to actually make a contribution to somebody else's world? This room is interesting because there's actually no windows in it. So if we were to turn all the lights off, this room would be pitch dark. And then of course, I would blow out the candle and this is the moment where no one can see anything. And if I said to you, hey, I can't see where the eggs are. I'm going to step on them soon. Could I get somebody to just come out of their seat and just help me clean up the eggs while I continue on the seminar if we've had a power outage and so on and so forth? Chances are, if that was you being invited, you'd say, no. Sorry, I can't even see my hand in front of my face. Like, it's pitch dark in here. And I go, oh, I'm sorry, let me turn on a light for you. And I went, and I shone this big spotlight right in your face. So you are blinded by the light. And I say, well, I turn the light on for you. Could you come up here now and just help me out? Well, you'd get out of your chair and you'd say, all right, I'll give it a go. But like, whoa, like that's like, and your hands would be out like this, and you'd be like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to trip on you. And are you somebody who's confident? No. Because you can't see where you're going. Why can't you see where you're going? Because the spotlight is on you. Welcome to mental challenges in the 21st century, where we've got social, internet, social media encouraging us to spend more and more time focusing on me, and then, well, put your hazard lights and let everyone else get more sympathy for me, and so it's all on me. But what if we just for a second took that same spotlight and shone it in the different direction? Instead of on you, what if we shone it in the direction that you were going? Well, you would look like this when I would invite you to come out. You'd get out of your chair and you'd say, sure, no problem, excuse me. And you would walk with boldness and confidence, because I can see clearly now the rain is gone. People without vision perish. They cast off restraint. This is not something we want to do. We want to live. And not just live, we want to live well. How do we do that? We've got to have our focus in the right direction. As Mr. Miyagi would say, your focus need more focus. Sorry for the cultural appropriation, but it worked in the moment. And the idea is that we have to focus more on our focus. Be intentional about what we're looking at. I want to be kind. So what resources, opportunities do I have? Research shows that if you hate your job, but you decide, whatever my hand finds to do, I'm going to do it with my might. I'm going to bless somebody today, serve them as though I'm like serving God. I'm going to take whatever gifts, skills, talents I have. I'm going to make a difference. Now, I might just be offering somebody a cup of tea. Might be paying somebody a compliment. Maybe it's not even a work colleague. Maybe it's a customer. I'm just going to make their day and go above and beyond and be friendly. Research shows that if you're not just a knower of the concept, but an activator of the principle called kindness, and you're experiencing depression, but you make a religious decision to be disciplined in your life, and day after day after day after day, research shows within 183 days you have made a significant recovery from your anxiety and depression without any medication, shock therapy, or any other talk therapy to boot. Now, this is amazing, and not that we're doing anyone out of a job, and I'm not suggesting that you go home tonight and flush the medication down the toilet, sack your therapist. No, I'm not suggesting that. But I am suggesting, what if we gave these principles a go as well? What if we actually didn't just know, oh yeah, it's a nice thing to be kind to... No! Today, right after this session, you've got an opportunity. You're going to meet somebody. How could you buy them a coffee? Go out of your way. How could you be kind? Here's the deal. If you're being kind, you're being generous. Generosity is not an activity, it's an identity. Generosity comes from the Greek, or actually from the Latin word generosus, which means one who is of noble birth. It's an identity. It's passed down to English through the French word généreux, which is where we get the word genius from. If you want to be a genius of noble birth, be generous. Not do generous, be. This is the embodiment of who you are. Go out of your way. And research shows that this right there is a game changer for you, especially when it comes to the other end of the spectrum, that concept of joy in our lives. Research, once again, shows that there are 3 different types of happiness. The first is called the pleasant life. It's where things are going well for me. I've got a good job, nice car, nice home, good girl or guy in my life. Things are going well until, as a result of the recession, there was downsizing at work and I got made redundant, and then my girlfriend or boyfriend left me, or my husband or wife, and they had an affair, and then all of a sudden, my life falls apart. It seems as though the pleasant life is only pleasant while things are going good for you. It's transient. The second type of happiness is called the productive life, which is where I love what I do. Right now, I've got to tell you, I love what I do. I love what I do, but I always hate that the clock says 8 minutes and 5 seconds and 40. Like, stop the clock! Like, I'm in the role here and I've got so much still to get through. And so things are great for me so long as the clock has lots of time. And the moment the clock starts shrinking down, I'm like, no, this is stressful. It seems as though, once again, the productive life is only ever transient. But the third type is called the meaningful life, which is where I get to make a meaningful contribution to the world around me. Now follow me for a second. In our day and age of a self-esteem pandemic, especially among young people, the number one strategy employed by our mental arena is to be able to say, let's praise our kids. Because a pat on the back is only a few vertebrae away from a kick in the pants. So let's praise, let's lift them up, let's edify them, and I would agree that's a great strategy if you want to give somebody a compliment. It makes them feel good in the moment, but that is not the strategy for self-esteem. If you want true, long-lasting self-esteem, encourage the child, the young person, to take the spotlight off themselves and plug it in to somebody else. What gifts, skills, talents, opportunities do they have to make an effective, valuable contribution? Now, here's the deal. If a young person is making a valuable contribution to the life of somebody else, can I just point out, value is the same as the term worth. Self-worth is the same as the term self-esteem, and self-esteem is the pathway to self confidence, when we activate what we got, and I got something to give. Everybody in this room has got something to give, and you could do it in right about 6 minutes and 27 seconds. As soon as this session is over, you can rise up and you can say, I got something to say. Hey, I love your shoes. Where'd you get them from? I can give a compliment. I can give an action of choice. I can buy somebody, bless somebody in some way. When we collectively make a decision, I'm going to be a force to be reckoned with. I'm going to rise up. Here's the principle. There's a great proverb. The proverb is actually found in the book of Proverbs. Chapter 18, verse 30 something, 7, I think, maybe not, but let's just pretend. It says, a person who can discipline themselves is stronger than a warrior who can conquer a city. This to me is both encouraging and discouraging. Encouraging because, hey, if we could discipline ourselves to be grateful in the dark times and apply ourselves by being kind to other people, irrespective of how I feel, I can become stronger than a warrior. This is amazing. And yet the proverb is at the same time almost suggesting, I think it's going to be easier for you to conquer a city than it is for you to conquer yourself. Discipline is hard. And in a day and age where we don't like self-responsibility and self-determination and self-discipline, no, just like push that to the side. People are not equal. People have there's different reasons why people, that all might be true, but yet we still got discipline. At the end of the day, the buck stops with you. What do you want? What do you want in life? Why do you want it? When are you going to have it by? And how will you know when you get it? These are questions that only you can answer. No one can answer them for you. You got to be able to do it. So come on, let's rise up and encourage people to take that responsibility to be disciplined. And just for today, one step, find 5 things to be grateful for. One step to do something nice for somebody else. And all of a sudden I discover, wow, this is a self-worth, a treasure that is rising up on the inside that no moth can eat, no rust can destroy, no thief can steal. This is timeless treasure. And if you can do all 4 of those things, have hope for an amazing future, believing that my tomorrow is going to be better than my today, and therefore I am going to have faith because somebody's looking out for me and I can be grateful for that goodness in my life, take the spotlight off myself and make a positive and valuable contribution to the world in which I live, then you might be able to tap into the 5th and final core character strength, which is called courage. It takes great courage to forgive the person or the organization or the institute or the business or the fill in the blank, the God, the person, whoever it might be, who encouraged you to get knocked back in your life. Because to extend forgiveness, well, they don't deserve it. So why would I forgive them? Well, only to reconcile your past if you want to get on with your future. Because in 2022, the planes are back flying again. But if you go and board an aeroplane and you've got your baggage on your lap, the hostess or the stewardess or the flight attendant or the steward will come to you and say, oh, I'm sorry, sir, but you're going to have to stow that bag either under the seat in front of you or in the overhead locker. And if you say, oh, no, it's okay. I don't mind my stuff right here. It's so convenient. I've got my reading glasses. I've got my iPad, latest book by Pastor Jonathan. Is this, thanks, but no thanks. To which the octave in their voice will change as they say to you, oh no, sorry, sir or madam, I don't think you understand. You see, the plane cannot take off until you have dealt with your baggage. And I would suggest, what a great metaphor for life. If you want your life to take off in 2022, it's time we dealt with our baggage. And to do that requires courage. It requires courage and confidence. How do we get the confidence? Take the spotlight off yourself, start blessing somebody else. How do we have the courage and confidence to be able to do that well? Be grateful and believe and have hope. The greatest definition of courage in literature today is called vulnerability. Doesn't sound like courage, doesn't it? Just doesn't seem to fit. But to take a risk and step out and to either forgive or to serve or to take responsibility or even just to go and see a professional. Sometimes that's the courage that we need to start the journey. But one final thought, and the risk of going over just 2 minutes, let me just end with this thought. We started with the idea, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Researchers in the 1970s in Canada became famous for a series of studies called the rat park experiments, where they took rats and put them into cages and gave them two different types of water to drink. One was normal water, and the other water was laced with heroin or cocaine. And so the rats, of course, would sniff and scratch and come along and taste one of the types of water, and then go over to the drug-laced water and taste that and go, whoa, hang on, something's not quite right about this. There's water. And to the researchers' surprise, the rats would continue going back to the drug-laced water and became addicted. Now, forever and a day, the theory was, well, because of the chemical properties inside the water create hooks inside the brain, and that's how people get addicted because of the neurochemical elements. Until not so long ago, one researcher thought, well, what if we changed up the experimental conditions a little bit? What if always just putting one rat in a cage on their own? What if we put rats in a cage together to create community, and maybe even gave them play instruments and stuff, and then introduced the two different types of water? One drug-laced and one normal. Well, inevitably, one of the rats would have had to have tasted both of them and then came back and told all the other rats, hey, there's something weird about this water. I'm not sure how the rat talks, but you know, and then the phenomena that they observed was that the rats in community would actively avoid the drug-laced water, including rats who were previously addicted to the drug-laced water, who were taken out of the independent cage on their own and placed into the cage with other rats who would avoid it. This phenomena has been repeated several times. It's quite controversial in the literature because, well, it doesn't make sense. Remember the theory? It's because of the chemical properties inside the water. That's why rats get addicted. But hang on, what's this phenomena? This phenomena that's been replicated in scientific studies, which is now changing the language in the halls of academia. Whereas previously we would say the opposite of addiction is called sobriety, now the common catchphrase is the opposite of addiction is called community. If you want to go far, go together.
Thanks for joining us today. To find out more about Red, visit edgechurch.com/red at any time. If you've been encouraged by this resource, we'd love to hear from you. Simply send us an email to care@edgechurch.com. And if you'd like to encourage others with this presentation, please feel free to share this resource with everyone you know. Together, we can change the world, one life at a time. This is Red. Rescue, Empower, Deploy.